Hey guys, how's it going? FGO released a servant that managed to pull off the unimaginable in several ways. This servant released in December and made it into the top 5 most grailed servants of the entire year. This servant utilizes the strengths of what is widely regarded as the worst card type in Fate, Quick, becoming a dominating monster of a unit. And this servant has a design that is so utterly perfect that it captured the hearts of players across the globe. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Louhi. And what better unit to pull off the impossible than one who defies possibility herself? Louhi is a fascinating character in Finnish mythology, and so today we will dive into her lore and some of the fairy tales surrounding her. Let's get into it. Let's start with who or what Louhi is. Louhi is sometimes described as a god, sometimes simply as a witch, and sometimes both. She also is sometimes believed to be an alter ego of the Finnish deity Loveater, the blind daughter of the Finnish god of death Tuoni. From my own research, the most likely explanation for this is that they are the same being, but during the writing of the Kalevala, they were separated for the sake of continuity. Most likely, Louhi is a regional name for Loveatar that's split off into a separate but similar character. For our purposes today though, I will be treating Louhi as a separate individual. Louhi rules the land of Pohjola, which is an ambiguous place to the north. This land is occupied by many beautiful women, many of which are the daughters of Louhi herself. This is despite the fact that Louhi's true form is that of a hag, and I'm talking about this kind of hag, not this kind of a hag. The draw of these many beautiful daughters is where Louhi comes into play in many tales. She is the trial bearer for many men who wish to take her daughter's hands in marriage. A good example of this comes from the Kalevala cycle, involving a blacksmith and her eternal rival Vainamoinen. Vainamoinen is something like an Odin figure, but as a demigod. He is a wise old man, possibly the first man, and the central figure in many Finnish myths. To skim the entire story of the Kalevala, you just need to know that due to certain circumstances, Vainamoinen was thrown off of his horse and left to drift in the sea. He wept and lamented during this time and eventually drifted to the land of Pohjola. Here, a young woman heard his cries and sent for Louhi, who pulled the man from the waters and asked him who he was and where he was from. Despite seemingly already knowing this, he informs her, to which he says that she will send him back to his homeland if he can craft the magical Sampo. He says that he can't do it, but he knows a smith who can, to which Louhi sweetens the deal, telling him that she will give the man who crafts such an item her eldest and most beautiful daughter as a bride. She then gives Vainamoinen the means to get home, but tells him not to look into the sky before sending him on his way. In true fairy tale fashion, he doesn't follow this advice and nearly dies of blood loss. However, he does make it to the smith, Ilmarinen, and tells him of the request. The smith refuses, saying that he will never go to the Northland, but is ultimately tricked by Vainamoinen and whisked away there. Here, the smith meets Louhi and her daughter and is struck by her beauty, and so agrees to forge the Sampo. Working tirelessly, the device is created. You've probably been wondering for a while now what a Sampo is. The Sampo is a divine mill that churns out 3 materials: grain, salt, and gold. One to create never-ending food, one to create a never-ending preservative, and one to create a never-ending stream of gold. Delighted at this creation, Louhi takes the device and hoards it all to herself, locking it behind 9 massive locks. With the task complete, the smith prepares to take his new bride home, but she says that she cannot leave yet. When the smith asks Louhi about this, she says that it will take some time to prepare her, and gives her new son-in-law food and sends him home. Some time passes and a new hero emerges seeking, or in his case, demanding a daughter of the north from Louhi. Enter Lemminkäinen. He calls upon Louhi, who puts him to the task of hunting the moose of Hishi while skiing. The arrogant hero tries to catch the creature and manages to do so, but it breaks free of its confines. In the ensuing chase, one of his skis break, leaving him without many options. Turning over a new leaf, Lemminkäinen denounces his arrogant ways and devises a new method to catch the beast. He calls upon the gods to assist him. He is then tasked to catch the horse of Hishi, but, much like before, calls upon the gods for help and succeeds. Finally, he is told to shoot the swan of Tuonela, but having wronged a herdsman in the past is met by a sea serpent who kills him. His body is then thrown into a river and cut into little pieces. When his mother learns of his fate, she demands Louhi tell her where her son's body is, but Louhi lies to her over and over and over again. This throws the woman into a rage until eventually Louhi relents. The old mother searches the whole of the land and finds where her son is and dredges the rivers for pieces of him. She manages to reassemble her son and then seals the wounds with holy honey, bringing him back to life. The mom then tells him to give up on his quest, which he relents to. Let's return to Vainamoinen, who has constructed a ship to get the eldest daughter of Louhi. He and the smith become rivals for her affection, and as they travel to the Northland, while initially hostile, eventually agree to be happy for the winner of her hand. Their approach alerts Louhi's dogs, who in turn alert Louhi. She sees the smith having returned for his bride and now sets tasks upon him as well. He must plow a field of vipers, catch the bear and wolf of Tuoni, and capture a giant pike with no rod or net. With his fiance's aid, he manages all but the final task where a giant eagle eats the pike save for its head, and is cursed by the smith. Returning with the head as proof that the pike was captured, Louhi is annoyed. However, she recognizes the feat and allows the marriage. Louhi sets about preparing for the wedding by slaughtering an ox taller than the clouds and brewing a special beer. Then she invites people from across the land and asks Vainamoinen to be the minstrel. The reveling of the Northlands alerts Lemminkäinen, who is offended that he wasn't invited and prepares to go to war with them. His mom, once again, tries to dissuade him but fails and warns him that doing so will lead to many deaths and misery. He marches into the banquet hall and demands to be served, and when he is told that the feast is over, demands beer. This ultimately leads to him killing the master of Pohjola, who isn't Louhi, causing Louhi to summon an army to kill him. Lemminkäinen flees and is forced to hide away for several years for his actions. After a series of events involving a man named Kalevala, the smith's wife and the first daughter of Louhi are murdered by wild animals, and so the smith sneaks a new wife from the Northlands. He tells Louhi of her daughter's fate and asks her for a new daughter, but is refused. He then goes to the daughter herself and demands that she comes with him, to which she refuses. He then kidnaps her and drags her away, literally kicking, screaming, and insulting the old man. When another man ends up making her laugh during this, the smith is so enraged that he turns her into a seagull, and then goes and complains to Vainamoinen about how prosperous the north is because of the Sampo. The pair resolve to go by sea to steal the Sampo, and pick up the third hero of the cycle, Lemminkäinen, as well. Using the power of music, they are able to lure everything in creation to witness Vainamoinen play, and eventually Louhi herself arrives and asks what they are doing. The hero tells Louhi that he wants the power of the Sampo for his people, but is refused by her, saying it cannot be shared. The object is too valuable to her people to be given away. So, Vainamoinen says that he will take it by force. Angered, Louhi calls her soldiers to kill the heroes, but all are put to sleep by his magical music. The party then steals the Sampo and flee by sea. When Louhi awakes and frantically checks on the Sampo, she panics after finding it missing. She then calls a massive sea fog and storm to kill the thieves. The group is stuck in this disaster for days until Vainamoinen desperately swings his magic sword, which dispels the curse. They are then forced to pacify a sea monster and finally terrible winds that nearly sink the ship, but the heroes are saved by calling on the gods who send birds to help them. Louhi is enraged and prepares an army to take back the Sampo. The heroes at one point spy a forested island but realize that there is no such island in these waters, and, in dread, realize that what they thought were trees were the weapons of the soldiers on a ship heading right for them. Vainamoinen manages to summon a shoal to crash the ship, but Louhi becomes a massive bird, using her shape-shifting abilities, and flies her army towards the ship. She lands on the mast and demands the Sampo's return, to which they offer to share it. But by this point, the time for niceties had long since passed. Thus, she tries to steal it herself, but is injured by Lemminkäinen's sword. This breaks a vow he had made to his mother to never battle again, to which Louhi insults the man. Vainamoinen, fearing the worst, breaks off the rudder of the ship and hits Louhi with it, knocking her and the army into the sea. But in a last desperate grasp, she manages to get a hold of the Sampo. However, it falls into the sea where it breaks apart. Here, the grain and the gold portion were broken, but the salt one still functioned, eternally churning salt into the sea. Louhi screams curses at Vainamoinen, threatening to take the sun and moon and bring 9 diseases to his people, to which the hero retorts that only the gods have such power. Louhi is then forced to flee while weeping. After this, Vainamoinen's land prospers. In retaliation, Louhi sends the diseases to kill the people, but they make saunas and balms to counteract them. She then sends a great bear to kill their cattle, but this too is pacified. Finally, Louhi actually manages to steal not just the sun and the moon, but all the fire in Kalevala. While attempts to create a new flame are made, it isn't enough and the people and animals begin to die. Vainamoinen then sets about reclaiming the celestial objects. He infiltrates Pohjola but is driven away by stone servants. Rather than rid themselves of these servants, Vainamoinen and the smith devise a way to bind Louhi for eternity in iron, and upon learning this, she sets the sun, the moon, and fire free. This is where Louhi's main story ends. Louhi is an archetypal fairy tale witch, but with what seems to be a bit more humanity in her. Primarily, she upholds her ends of her bargains, and while she was undeniably cruel, cared for the people of her land. Her tale is a curious one, and one I'm glad to have shared with all of you. But that's all for now. Louhi in the books. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. I'd like to make a personal apology to Mist and all of the people of Finland for butchering these names. Please forgive me, I love salmiakki. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. You can support me by doing all the YouTube things and checking out my links below for my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter. But for now, keep your chin up. Peace.